We're going to go ahead and get started. And there you are, Kevin. I just wanted to welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us today, and welcome to In the Art of Living series. In the Art of Living is a hosted by PureEsperanza, and PureEsperanza is a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing forth consciousness while educating body, mind, and soul in the art of living. Tonight's topic is In the Art of Living, Solely You After a Split. And we did have a pun on words there, solely as in this is your journey and you're doing that work yourself. And this is also a soulful part of journey for the individual to make self-transformation as well. Or that's at least one opportunity that can come from all of this when you have a split in a relationship. And just wanted to make sure that before we get into tonight's topic, there's a couple of things I wanted to go over with you before I introduce my co-host, and that is the navigation bar at the bottom of your screen. If you hover and you're not familiar with the Zoom platform, just go to the bottom of the screen, hover over, you should see a navigation bar. All the way to the left-hand side is a mute button. And if you have a lot of noise in your background, if you just mute yourself, and then when you go to speak, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself, and certainly also use the chat box, which is another feature on that navigation bar. If you scroll over to the middle and hover over that little bubble chat box, you can click onto that. I encourage you all to do that right now. And then over to the right bottom of your screen, you'll see a little box that you can actually type in questions or anything you want to do there to communicate with one another, or if you have a question there, we'll do our best to be navigating from there also and answering your questions. If you notice in that chat box, there's an everyone, it says to everyone. That's a way that you type and it'll show up for everyone on the call. If you want to do individual messaging, you can just click on that menu button and it'll show the callers that are on this call, and you can send direct messages also, so there's private messages also. All right, and without any further ado, I would love to introduce you now to a friend and a co-host who I am so honored to have met on my journey, and that we share some similarities in some of our journey. And her name is Jenn Maronek, and she is an RN, a medical intuitive, a clairvoyant medium, and also a writer. And that's actually how I came to find Jenn, is through one of the blogs that she had wrote about positivity. And it was just something that really sunk in deep, and it's right in alignment with the whole idea of the energy that we are working with. And that's in our body, mind, and soul. And it lines up right with PureEsperanza's mission. So again, without any further ado, thank you, Jenn. Thank you for being here tonight and sharing your story with us and for everyone here on their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very important thing. The first thing I wanted to do with everybody, and welcome, I'm very honored and privileged to be here with everybody tonight, is if you have your writing utensil and piece of paper, I was going to have you write down one word, which is happiness. And then I want you to circle the middle letter. So I learned this one through the course of using my journals a lot as I was getting a divorce from my ex-husband. Now, this was nearly 10 years ago, so I have a lot of experience of the process of healing and what that looks like when you're leaving a relationship from someone. I mean, we all have relationships, right? There's the coworkers, there's the friends, there's people that come and go out of our lives all the time. But it's those intimate ones where we're more vulnerable and more connected, because it's not just physical connection, but it's that heart-centered spiritual connection. I know for myself, I grew up as a very intuitive, empathic human. And what that might translate to or look like is that I was constantly receiving information or energy sources, and I didn't know how to separate myself from that information. So I'm constantly like out here living in that physical peripheral world of what I can see and hear and touch, but sometimes it didn't make all the sense to me. And the way I adapted coping with that was turning into what's known as a codependent. So for those of you who don't know, a codependent is someone who learns how to enable others as a sense of safety and a sense of worth. So wherever I went, I was looking for, what do you need? What can I do for you? How can I serve you? Now, I believe this 120%, which is that I believe that we attract and we're gifted the kind of people that we need in order to start to see our own patterns and heal. So what happened after 29 years of living life as this codependent, energetic kind of empath is I attracted a man who was very narcissistic or needy. So also being a registered nurse as my current day job is that I know how to caretake people. I know how to help people. And I love that. I love being healing and honoring of humans in their life path. The person I had attracted, however, was very painful. It felt like, you know, plugging myself into the wrong energetic circuit, that it just wasn't feeding me or helping me. As soon as we got together and got married, so everything was official on paper, he stopped working. So I was supporting this household by myself. I would go to my day job and come home and still have stuff to do around the house. I wasn't really emotionally supported. I know my husband would leave things around the house and would say to me things like, you know, so I'm saying, I'm tired. I've just come home from work. I need some help. I'm coming home and doing the dishes and the cleaning and the laundry. And I just need to find a way that you could start to help me. And he chose not to, at which point I said, well, then I might choose not to do your laundry anymore. And his response to me was, well, we'll see who will win that, because I have enough underwear to last me a month. So it was this idea that what I was trying to move forward and grow in life was just kind of a hard obstacle. And the universe, which I really know this, is that I wasn't meant to stay in that kind of container, because we're all meant to grow and develop into our concept of who we want to be, the things that we find valuable to us, the things that we find worth through. And it wasn't this marriage container. The relationship was very draining. And I decided, it was only 2 years, but I decided I've had enough emotional investment, because honestly, I've been living my life this way for most of my life in terms of giving of myself to other people. It's time that I find myself. The way this was gifted to me was that the universe had to bring in another woman into my relationship in order for me to finally see the writing on the wall that this was not going to be sustaining for me. It was probably the lowest moment of my life, because we had a domestic altercation. And it was that moment when I woke up the next morning and I still had like 3 bruises on my neck from him trying to strangle me over a domestic dispute, that I decided, this is not me. This is not how I want to live. And I need to leave the situation. So as it does, everything lined up that I was able to leave and return back. My family took me in and I had a roommate for a short while, but here's where my healing really started. Because as soon as I was on my own, I had to start answering questions for myself, that I'm no longer giving to this other person in this codependent model. What is it that I need for myself in terms of how to grow myself, my wants, my feelings, and my connection within me? I definitely know we attract what we need and we attract what we're working on. So for me, I now consider my marriage my perfect, imperfect situation, because it perfectly mirrored for me all the things that I needed to see and work on within myself. Like, I started to ask myself, have I been too giving? And if I've been too giving to other people, then how can I start to be giving to myself? As I like journaling, as I mentioned. And there was this one day that I was journaling and I was so focused. I was so outwardly focused on, gosh, what did I do in my marriage? And why didn't it work out? And how come I didn't love him enough? And this is what I was thinking in my mind. But my mind was so distracted by these ruminating thoughts that my hand just kind of ended up taking over. And I wrote literally in my journal, I said, how can I learn to love myself? Even though I was thinking in my brain, how can I learn to love this man or love my situation more? My hand channeled in there myself. And as soon as I had written it, I stopped and I looked at that and I thought, whoa, I had no intention of writing myself, but that's just what came out. through the course of me just allowing what my inner self already knew. I know that we all have so much wisdom inside of us all the time. It's just believing and trusting about how to access that. So I want to tell you a couple different stories. So the painting behind me, I sat here in this chair with purpose because I felt so lost when I left my marriage, because it's, you know, it's the structure I knew. It's the structure I had chosen to build my life out of. And all of a sudden that was gone. I felt dizzy a lot, like physically dizzy. I felt very anxious. I felt lost. I just didn't know who I was yet or where I was going. And the analogy that my body gave me was that I was like a ship at sea and I was tossing about. I had no idea where land was because I just felt that alone and lost and unstable. So I ended up flying down to Key West, Florida to visit a friend of mine about 4 months after I left my marriage. And I was walking down Duval Street and we passed this art shop. And I saw this painting out of the corner of my eye and it just spoke to me, like my entire body shifted. I felt relaxed and calm. And I pointed at that from across the street. I could see it. And I said, that is what I want. Like, that's where I'm trying to get to. And it's this beautiful oasis scene with one tiny little boat in it. And metaphorically and symbolically, I'm like, that is me. I need to reroute, reground, find my own shore, find my own way, and be able to stand on my own 2 feet with confidence and stop relying on other people to assume that they will be able to do that for me. I know that it took me a lot of years to kind of process through the emotions. Emotions are a huge roller coaster. You never know when they're going to show up, or necessarily, you know, there's no specific end date. It's just an allowing of a process that's already a part of you, and you're meant to move through that and grow with it. I know that one of the other things, because after my divorce, believe it or not, like that's when my intuition and my spiritual practices started to highlight even more, because it was realizing, okay, the focus on me and the practices that I can develop to make myself, you know, confident, grounded, secure, having that kind of lifeline. Like I said before, being married was like being plugged into the wrong socket. Well, this time it was, I'm plugging into myself and channeling in this higher consciousness of wisdom that just started to birth within me and provide me a lot of healing and reassurance. I wanted to give you a specific example. I used to be a travel nurse, so I had always had a fear of traveling by myself. And I think I used my marriage in part as a kind of a safety net to being able to travel. And when I got my divorce, I decided, okay, I know something. I know something that's true for my heart and my passion is travel. So how can I find a way to do this to support myself and live my dream at the same time? And one of the answers that was there for me was to become a travel nurse. So I did that for about 5 years. And one of the trips that I took was to Hawaii. Again, I had this intuitive moment of, I need more healing. I need a place that's calm and serene and just time for me to express myself and relax. So I went to Hawaii expecting to have a contract of a nursing job where I could be paid and make some money during the course of the time. But what happened is every single day I was there, I was canceled from my contract. And the literal thought of me was like, well, what's going on? I can't believe I'm being canceled. But the brilliance is, it turned out to be a 2-week period where I had my time to relax and just be myself and enjoy. So it was a pure gift that I was able to receive this time by myself. And one of the nights that I was alone by myself, I was in this almost like meditative bit. I was journaling in my journal. And again, it was just something that came out of the depths of me. I had no idea that I was about to write this or draw this. But what came through is, Esperanza, if you wouldn't mind showing me the first slide here, is I was like, this is how I've been feeling most of my life and all through my marriage. Is this little amoeba like stick figure is exactly how I felt. And intuitively, I knew just to keep drawing all of these arrows outward, because everything in me, I had just constantly been giving out. Like I need to help you. How can I help you? And so then I ended up thinking, well, I know about electricity and circuitry from any type of electrical system. So I need to start putting energy back into it. So I drew the next little figure and decided that the new me has to look something like this. And I made the little halo at the head for like the light and the consciousness wisdom that flows through, and being able to receive and give out at the same time. And that makes that heart-centered true connection. From there, I began to understand that regardless of the outcome, like it doesn't matter, like separate the journey from the destination type of model. Whatever the outcome is, it didn't matter. This was about organizing my life around myself rather than another person to help make me happy. And it was prioritizing my relationship with me. And ultimately, I discovered that I didn't need to find another person to unlock the true door to my inner happiness. It was just finding my true power and peace through the model of me and knowing that I am my own beautiful work, being more mindful, reading books, studying, meditating, and a practice of good self-care. Because as Esperanza said, by day trade, I am a registered nurse, and I truly believe that self-care is healthcare. The more we can take care of ourselves and know that we deserve, and truly, we are already worthy. Like, we're already worthy here in this moment. It's just finding the way to act on who you are and the knowledge of yourself rather than on what others want for you or from you. Knowing that that drawing was a big piece of my journey and kind of an aha moment. Like, I will never forget that moment because it was so poignant and stuck with me so much, that this is the opportunity that I wanted to offer to all of you. I'm going to turn on a little bit of meditative music just to kind of set the mood, but to really center yourself and take some deep breaths, just kind of grounding into you. And if there's anything that comes to you or feel like you want to put on paper, even if it doesn't make sense now, it might show up as some kind of symbol that makes sense down the line. What your body wants to know about what it is you're feeling and going through at this moment, knowing that you are becoming solely you after your split. There are never wrong answers. Whatever you feel called to put on your paper, whatever, even if it's a word, a symbol, an idea, you are gifted in love and light. And the energy you have in you has been present with you from day one. And this newfound transition in your life is a transition. It's something that's calling you to a new way. That you deserve even more love and more grace, not only from yourself, but that will ultimately attract new people to you who can mirror that same expression of your love and your light. Take a few deep breaths with me. And when you feel inclined, open your eyes and write down or put down or draw anything you feel inspired to about who you are now and where you see yourself going. We'll just take a few more seconds to wrap up whatever it is you're writing or drawing at this moment. And when you're ready, we'll come back as a group. This will be something for you. It's a practice I do pretty regularly, especially when I'm ending a meditation. I'm very visual in my meditation, so if I see something, I always draw it out because eventually, if not in the moment, it will make sense later and usually and always be 100% accurate for whatever it is I'm transitioning through or going through. I want to remind everybody that finding your own inner power and inner pieces, like developing those inner pieces, is very sacred work. There's many times that I felt complete bliss and overwhelm or would just burst into tears in a state of happiness I didn't ever experience or really know. And it helped me calm down and heal myself to know, like, this is the beautiful divine work that we get to do, that you're called here with purpose for this reason, to heal and discover you. Like, you can be the most profound person and the most amazing person. I have developed this best friend relationship with myself where I don't ever feel alone anymore because I know that I'm connected to me and I'm connected to my belief in a higher power and my higher consciousness. And because I love words and I'm a scientist at heart also, is that the term sacred, the Latin word root, is that it's a person or thing that's designated as unique or extraordinary. And I really like that because to me that just goes hand in hand with my thoughts that we're all living our unique, authentic life for whatever that looks like. And to trust the intuitive hunches and the internal guidance that you receive, because it's really the true north compass for your boat so you can land directly on the land you're meant to.
Hi, Jen.
Yeah.
Hear me? Okay. Hey, I had a message here. T, I think you may have wanted to ask a question, or you were asking if you could ask questions. We didn't say that, but I just want all of you to know that we want this to be as interactive as possible. So if any of you have questions right now, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat box. And certainly at any point in time, we want to be able to address that and really honor that moment with you when that question comes to mind. So if anyone has any questions now, this is a great time before we transition over to another segment. And if you want to share what it is that you went through right now and maybe something that came to you with the group, you're welcome to do that as well too.
Hi, Jen. So
Hi.
this is T.
Hi, T.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for being here.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. I want to say first, thank you for sharing your testimony, because that's what I'm going to call it, a testimony. But this is something that I want to share with you. I don't know if you are aware, but could you put up the 2 images?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I want to bring something to your attention. Okay, so I don't know if you're aware, but your whole concept now is putting yourself first.
Yeah.
So if you notice in the how you describe yourself at the beginning and how you describe yourself now, look at where you put the word me at. I know. So even you put the word me first. And I was like, I wonder, did she notice that?
I did not notice that.
So I just want to say, you go, girl. Yeah. So and yeah, it's just beautiful.
Thank you. That's I had not noticed that at all, but that is just those powerful subconscious things that happen. Just we're being guided to right things. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thanks, T.
Is there anybody else that would like to share or ask a question at this moment? We have other people that are coming in right now, so hi. Hello. Let's see if I can see who's all coming in there. Oh, hello. Hi, Alicia. Hello. Welcome. So we already started, and yeah, you're welcome just to jump in wherever we are now, Alicia.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. So Jenn had just shared, Jenn Maronek, who is co-hosting with me tonight, just shared some of her personal story and walked us through a guided exercise where we were able to meditate on part of our journey right now, what's coming to us right in this moment, and then how to express that if we wanted to draw it or write it. And I'm going to be sharing with you now some of my journey. And as each of you are aware, each and every one of us are having such individual journeys. You know, so one of the key things that's always important with these kinds of sessions or whenever it is that we're doing healing work is that we are able to honor our journey and not compare it with other journeys, because everybody is so individualized. So one of the things that we do as humans is kind of gauge and measure what we might think is our progress by what somebody else is doing or what someone else isn't doing. And it's really important to be able to establish that connection more and more with yourself and those quiet places inside of you and the way it really speaks authentically to you. And so my story is a lot different than Jenn's, of course. And my story is that I had met my first husband when I was very young. We were both very young. And I too, like Jenn, shared in the fact that I had a lot of empathic tendencies. But my journey was really always very clearly a very deeply spiritual one. And it was a time during my childhood where I didn't always make a lot of connections because I was really in a spiritual world a lot of the time, and it was really hard for me to navigate in a physical world. That being said, I had a hard time, I think, making connections with a lot of people and had lived in a household where I was kind of alone, even though there was 6 siblings, but there was a big gap between myself and the rest of my siblings. So, you know, all those things play a part in it, you know, our background, our family, our environment, all those different things. Part of my story was also just living in a time when it was still very segregated, even though you know, the civil rights movement was going on and there was already, you know, awareness about those kinds of things, but a lot of different trauma that happened early on, having to do with my parents being immigrants, having to do with me being a different color in a Caucasian area, having to do just the time, the generation, you know, what the set of skills were that my parents had or didn't have, and the school systems and so many different things. But when I met my first husband, it was a really glorious thing because we were really best friends for a very long time. And we spent about 10 years together, having just a joyful exploration of body, mind, and soul, and growing in those capacities. And we were workshop junkies with all kinds of new age things at that time, and really delved deeply into a lot of that spiritual realm. And then when, you know, we had married and waited a 5-year period within that 10-year period time, we married, and after 5 years, decided to have children. And it became really crystal clear to me as I did more of that grounding work that I really wanted to do this cleansing. And I went deep. And when I mean deep, I mean like, you know, I was doing cleansing on every level. And I think that at that time, my partner really kept up with a lot of those things I was doing. So when my children arrived, I was very conscious that I wanted to bring them into this world and they be kind of these beings that would arrive, and I would get to transmit all this spiritual wisdom and enlightenment that I was having, and continue on this path. And I would say by the time I had my third, it was really clear that a lot of that enabling, similar to Jenn's, was really clear. I had taken a lot of college classes at that time, and also come into working with disabled adults, then having children, and then I became a Waldorf teacher, and all of it was about giving, giving, giving. And at one point in time, I was definitely the responsible one leading everybody. And I needed help from my spouse at that time as well. And clearly there were things that, like every human being, we have capacities, and we're not always growing at the same space. So after 30 years, at about the 25th year of being married, we already had 10 of those years leading up to that were pretty rocky, and we had to split. And I am thankful now that in his journey, he had to do that, because by then we had 4 children. But I'm thankful that he was able to honor what that path was, even though it was so unbelievably confusing for me at that time, because he couldn't live that life and I couldn't live that life, because in the outer world, I was professional and confident and moving forward and creating lots of things, but at home it wasn't like that at all. And I won't go into all the details because it's not so necessary to do all that. The book that I wrote, Girls Seeking Pearls, was part of a story told in third person about a girl who was seeking pearls. And that's the story of my life, that it was always this spiritual journey about seeking these truths of whatever life meant. And that's exactly what life gave me. Everything that I wanted to seek, everything that I was in search of, was exactly what life gave me, including with that time with that partner and all the things I was yearning to do. I did not know at that time, and I did have that question, as I'm sure many of us who find ourselves in this situation think about, which is, I didn't sign up for this. In some way or other, we think, wait a minute, how? I didn't sign up for this, which was that I didn't know the kind of pain that I would experience after that period of time. It was a shedding, and prior to this, I had done shedding of different types of ideas and belief sets and ego and all kinds of things. But at this moment in time, it was a complete disruption to every identification I had with myself. And it was a stripping down of 30 years of my life. And what was it for? And it was a toss and a turmoil, and it was death, except that we were still alive, but it was a grief that was like death. And so I think, whatever that sorrow is, or whatever that pain is, or whatever that relationship was about and what we were learning from it, it really comes back to ourselves. And this is where I would like to share with you a little bit here. Let's see if I can pull it all up. Hold on 1 second. And just go into a little bit more of what I encountered. So solely me, like the title of this webinar, I am is what I found myself with in those darkest of moments. And I found that in that process, there was a lot of pain. And up till then, I had endured a lot of different kinds of pain, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Different paths, but that definitely was, I was aware of a lot of initiations that I had taken on in my life, and a lot of walking through the fire and on the other side, what that looked like. And so finding peace was always like the center place. And to do that required being able to courageously face those very deep, deep down alone parts, which most of us in the human experience as social beings tend to avoid or tend to fill those voids with external things. But I found that by going into nature and having that kinship with nature and other places where I could find serenity and solitude, it allowed me to find that peace. I think I skipped over one there, so I'm going to go back. And the other, and of course, these are just a couple of things that may be useful for your journey, but there are so many. And so I'm just sharing with you 3 here, and they involve the healing arts. Some of that, to me, was movement. So that movement was that inner movement that you find in meditation or in other types of states where you can really be in that just stillness. And then the other was in the outer movement, which was moving. I found an insatiable need to move my body, and I did not know that by moving my body made me feel good until after I had done that. I had shared with Jen not too long ago that that's when I started to routinely do workouts again. And I wasn't doing it because I wanted to get fit. I was doing it because I had to break free from the incessant thoughts that I had about what was going to be, and all the racing of the mind that was going on, not just with my husband or my former husband and I, but also our children. And they were in teen stages at that moment, plus I had one that was still really young, and all the factors, all the ramifications of all of this dissolution and what was going to happen. So there was a lot going on, and by moving my body, it actually broke the chain of thoughts, like the domino effects of the thoughts, and allowed me to breathe. And I would push really hard so that I externally had to breathe to gasp for air, just so that I could actually break free from the kinds of thoughts that were going on all the time. So movement was very powerful. Music, even if I wasn't moving my body, has always been a powerful tool to use it to breathe with and to find rhythm in that breath. And even in the music, often helps the mood shift the mindset. So working with the different types of sound and the vibration of that sound and the frequency actually helps us to move in a very, it's not a very like a mental kind of activity. It's just an unconscious movement that happens. And music can be a real healer in that way, as we already know so much of the research that's done on that as well. And then the visual arts. Like Jen, I doodled a lot, I drew a lot. In fact, later on in time, when I took up a manuscript that I had started well before I had children, at this time of the divorce, I started getting images in the meditations that I was having, and I would be drawing them. This particular image is from a chapter in Girl Seeking Pearls, my book called Cracked Eggs. And there were a whole slew of drawings that came out, and they actually were all the illustrations that were made for each chapter of the book. But immersing yourself with creative types of activity and engaging your hands and your heart are powerful tools as well. And finally, just coming to the conclusion, as Jen had mentioned, love myself, I am. And those pieces were parts of what can help us as well as we move forward and transcend the pain, transmute those kinds of feelings which may have been debilitating us in some way or limiting us, and then breaking free from that. So that's that transmutation that happens then. So we shift that energy and we shift that consciousness. And those were just some of the powerful things that were happening during that period of time. So what I'd like to do now is to take another moment, and if you doodled when Jenn had shared that exercise before, I would like for you now to write a word or two or some interpretation of your doodle. And if you wrote during that time, take a moment or two just to take what first comes and pops into your mind and doodle. You don't have to be an artist. You can just, whatever it is that comes. And this is going to be for you to work with. So while you're doing that, I'll just share with you that when you go into sleep at night, this is yet one last tool to work with. You can take what you have become aware of right now during our time together. You can apply it to yourself by using these different tools that are accessible to you. And even in your own stillness, you can find some that will come to you. And perhaps they're even revisiting old things from like when you were a kid or a child, the things that made you feel good or made you feel centered. And when you go into sleep, take them with you and allow yourself to come to this full forgiveness, because that's a whole other webinar that we could do, and we haven't yet really touched on that right now, which that piece of love myself is very much connected to forgiveness. At first, we think it's about forgiving the other and whatever wrong we think they did. And then it really comes more about forgiving ourselves for what we allowed to happen, whether it was that we were not being true to ultimately we were not being true to ourselves or true in a situation or whatever it was, because we see it reflected outside of us by the actions of what the other does. And then when we come into that piece, we can work with that forgiveness for ourselves. That's really when we start to tap into how to love ourselves deeply and have that deep connection with our higher self. So dream time can be very useful for that as a useful resource. And certainly I would love to hear from you now. If you have tools that you're working with, you want to share parts of your story, this is a great time. And we want to hold that space for you to help with that, because everyone's story, like I said, is so different. Anybody want to share with something that came to them right now?
Hi.
Hi, T.
Okay, so I just want to know, will the tools help with emotional attachment?
I believe that the tools will be effective to you, most effective to you in any healing that you're doing, because that's a conversation between you and your presence, your I, capital I. So work with them and see what comes from them. I do know that in my experience, it did help with the emotional pieces as well.
Me too, T. I don't know if you've ever heard of the
Alexa,
idea that emotion,
living room,
energy in motion. So I feel
okay.
like with the energy and motion concept of that emotions are just energy that needs to move through us for things that haven't quite yet healed or resolved in them is absolutely physical exercise. I know from being a nurse and working with patients for 15 years and through my own healing journey, just moving my body and getting stuff that was stuck in there physically out. And if it's accompanied by emotional release, like crying, that makes it it can make it a lot faster just to release that. And the beautiful thing I love about tears, I'm never afraid of crying, is that there's something called leuencephalin that's released in our brains. It's a neurotransmitter, but it's also a chemical that comes with an extreme sense of peace, healing, and relaxation. So that's kind of a free universal gift from the universe for getting hormones attached to tears through helping healing.
Jen, what did you call it earlier? Because you were echoing. You called
Oh,
it emotional something?
oh, the very first thing I said, the E, the emotion stand for energy and motion.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, if you just take like E and then motion and separate it, it's just energy in motion.
Anybody else have anything from their own experiences, anything that's been useful? Because, you know, it's through our sharing, and even if it, you know, even if it wasn't directly like Jen's experience as a divorce, my experience as a divorce, there's oftentimes we have relationships that end, you know, and this is, I think, applicable to any significant relationship that we have, or even parts of ourselves that are sometimes dying off or re-emerging or reinventing ourselves in some way.
I will say a story, if that's okay, really quickly, because I think it speaks to T's last point about emotional attachment, because it's something I've noticed for myself, which was an interesting, like, I like this. I had a best friend for over 12 years, and she and I were very much connected, and we would travel. She was my travel buddy. And the more I did healing on myself and this kind of emotional release and understanding my basic needs, my basic relationship requirements, that energy in that relationship just began to dissipate. And I felt less inclined to put more energy into it, because the healthier I got, the more unhealthy the relationship showed itself to be. And it's different when I say it's different, this is what I mean, is that I just stopped putting energy into the relationship, and I had no more emotional connection or attachment to it. And the separation was actually surprisingly easy, because I felt, you know, this just doesn't speak to me or my energy anymore, and the way that I know I want to be valued as a human, and the things that I value and just resonate in friendships or any kind of relationship in general. And because I had done the healing and allowing of the emotions and the writing and the processing and all of that, it was a very smooth transition. It was shocking and surprising, but it was also very honoring of myself and of her, just to say, like, this is who I am and what I need. If this doesn't match anymore, I can bless you on your journey as I bless myself. And we're just not energetically compatible.
Alexa, turn on living room 1. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was it.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Jen. I wanted to also bring up something that usually happens when it's a split in a relationship. Kudos to you, Jen, that you were just like really working with yourself. And I think, you know, for myself, I had a period of time like that too. But as I began looking to be in a partnership, or thinking that that was a possibility, you know, it's important that we remember that whatever work we have left undone will still come. It doesn't disappear. Thankfully for me, I've been married now going on 8 years, together 10, and we were both committed to that work, both of us having come from long-term relationships. So we have very much been thankful for the willingness and the ability to mature and develop together from those places that, you know, both of us similarly out in the professional world, that's not visible, but in the internal world, it was there, places inside of us that needed healing. So I'm just so thankful for my husband now. But, you know, had he not been who he was, or I not be where I was in that process, that might have been another relationship that wouldn't have worked, because there were still things that when I did connect with him that I was still working on in myself. And so that's just the truth of it, that, you know, the working on ourselves doesn't really stop. And any relationship, whatever kind of relationship, works because there's people that are willing to do that work. And if you're in that relationship, you're willing to do that together in some way. So it's important to know, that I don't know that everything becomes like, 100% peachy keen, I know that things that I wished for, like knowing coming out of that first relationship or that marriage for all those years, I knew there were things that I definitely needed, wanted, and knew myself enough to know, like, these are my boundaries, right? And those may have not been as clear before, but that's still evolving. And I'm thankful that, in our relationship, we're evolving and we welcome that. And so that's a really good thing. But just to share that piece with you as you embark on possibly starting another relationship after that. So in this time, I'd like to just maybe ask a question, and you guys can use the chat box. And that would be just to ask, what has been the hardest thing, and it could just be one word, just what has been the hardest thing through your process in healing? If you just type that into that box. So I typed in something there. Yeah. So some of those things are just, so is it okay to just kind of read these and just comments, because some of them may have come through private or to everyone without knowing that? Let me take that. So I'll start just by saying, facing dark places in myself, that's been probably the hard part. Confidence, trust that it's for the greatest good for all of us, feeling like a failure. For those of us that are on, I can just say that, I'm here with all of those feelings definitely crossed when I was doing that work. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know about you, but I also had mentioned to Jen when we were talking about this the other day, like just discovering how much fear had been, like, for whatever reasons, fear has been I think of it now as an ally, but it was always like poking and prodding me like all along, because I had so many fears in my life. And believe me, when that marriage ended, it was like the fears like just came out like the Dementors, Jen from Harry Potter. It was horrible. It was just, swarming. And so, yeah, so there's just so many different feelings that we go through. It's just amazing. But the other amazing thing is that just as you're hearing us speak tonight, and I'm sure there's so many other inspirational pieces to your life, we heal. We do. And that's what's really powerful, to know that we have that ability.
Hey, Esperanza, just to clarify, healing is an ongoing process, correct? You just don't stop. Because I feel like I've been healing forever.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's true.
Yeah, it is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
It's my mom, she's 78 this year, and she and I will talk on the phone, and she'll say, God, I'm 78. You think I'd have it figured out by now? or it's just, you know, you revisit something, or it just pings you in a different way. But I honestly know that the trigger or that intensity lessens.
Yes.
It does. With healing, it's like the physical body. If you get a wound, there's fresh, raw tissue that grows upward from the bottom to cover your skin again. And that wound has to be nurtured, the right nutrition, the right environment, hydration. But its job, you know, you have no control over that, but your beautiful sense of self covers that for you, and it grows it from the root up as you heal to create new skin. It doesn't mean your skin can't get hurt again, but it just means that you'll know the intensity is not so much. Yeah.
You know, we're just about at the hour here, and I thank you for that, Jen, because that was just a really beautiful analogy, and it's important to remember that, because we don't have to feel like we're taking all these steps backwards when we find ourselves crying again about something. I think there is pieces that we just keep healing, you know, so we may find these pieces through, you know, over time, and they may just be new things that we're starting to discover about ourselves. So just remember that with those tears, there are those places that are opening too. There's an awareness that can be happening in those places and as we heal. So it's a healing journey, and I'm so honored to have you all here tonight and for the little bit of sharing we did. And maybe before we close, just one more thing. So maybe one word right now of something that you gleaned from tonight that you can take with you on your journey, just as you imagine yourself healing. Thank you. Love, beauty, understanding. Thank you. So with that, and always the blessing of understanding, that's beautiful. And you know, such deep, rich wisdom that comes from all these healing journeys that we take. I just wanted to share with you a little bit more as we close out. Jen, I know that you have some places where they can visit you, and I wanted to share this beautiful photo of you, Jen, and your podcast that you have. And if you want to share a little bit more about that in your blog, things like that, where they can reach you, and type that into the chat.
Oh, sure. Yes, I will put this in the chat. It's on Apple Tunes, Spiritually Successfully Single, and it's my journey over the last 10 years, the spiritual wisdom I received from my downloads. I know 15 minutes is a short little blurb to be able to discuss all of the wisdom. So I have up to 25 episodes and more, and I'm just building that template because I really, really believe in my messages and the messages that are coming through me to give to people, and whether it speaks to people in their own healing journey. I know synchronicity is huge, because as I was going through my healing journey, I read over 12 books in 3 months. I was referred to, you know, I'd go to one person who would refer me to another person, who'd refer me to another person, and every person I had something to take from them that helped me tremendously in my healing process. A, to let me know that I wasn't alone, and B, to kind of have a future idea of what it could possibly look like. Because that really, I mean, the unknown is the unknown. It's everything. It's huge. It's too open. But to have a focal point of something that we can kind of, okay, that's where I'm aiming or what I want, and here are the slight steps that I can take to get there, is instrumental in healing and setting our course on our journey. So I will leave my information down here below. And if anything speaks to anybody, you're more than welcome to reach out to me.
And your website as well. You have that there too, Jen?
Yeah.
Great. And then apart from being the founder and executive director of PureEsperanza. Well, PureEsperanza nonprofit, but you can find us at pureesperanza.org. But myself personally, before all that had come about, was the book that I had mentioned earlier, Girls Seeking Pearls. You can find that available on pureesperanza.org in the shop. All proceeds go to the nonprofit and to the programs that we're doing, things like being able to host this, being able to get our messages out via all the different social media platforms that we're on. So you can find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and also LinkedIn and Alignable, some different tools that you can find also to work with. We also have a blog on our website and a community page, which Jenn is on, and you will find a number of resources, many different educators, healers, and artists, but all really with an underlining message of healing and being able to integrate with body, mind, and soul. And that's really, I believe, where we're all headed right now on this big healing journey. You know, we have our individual ones, and then we have this collective one that's happening. And certainly, you know, through this pandemic and all the different other social unrest that's going on, it's really propelling all of us to work with ourselves and to bring that contribution to the whole. And with that, I'd just like to again thank everyone for being here and honoring you and your journey. Namaste. Reach out to us. Love to hear from you again. Blessings to you all. This will be recorded, so we will have it on the YouTube channel, and we will send that link off to you as well to be shared with others or to look back on in any way that is useful for yourself. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you so much. Thank you, T. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, JP. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and those who were able to stay or not stay. Alicia, too. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Good night.